Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig show and to our brand new series. It's called Parshas and Prose. It's me and my dear friend and my co-host Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. How are you, Rabbi?
Baruch Hashem, everything is fine except of one fact that the summer is very close to an end. So I'm sitting right now in school. We're preparing for the new year. It's very exciting, but summer is nice. You can relax, and this is over.
Yesterday I was driving past Earl Bales Park, which is a park here at Shepherd and Bathurst area. And when the summer approaches and as we go through it, the green becomes greener and lusher. And I often point out to my son the beauty of what we're surrounded by, and I ask him how many different greens that he can see. And I was a little bit saddened yesterday as I was driving past the area that we go in order to take him to his mom's, and I saw, and I wasn't sure, I saw that there was a tree and the color was changing in the tree. And this saddened me because all my life since I'm a little boy, I've always thought this year maybe there won't be a winter.
Not happening. Let me tell you, one
No.
of the most fascinating things when we came to Canada was this change of color. Because in Israel, the seasons, I wouldn't say that summer is not summer, it's very hot, but you don't feel it as you feel it here. Like winter is winter, summer is summer, spring is spring. And this change of color was like, wow, one of the wonders of nature that we never experienced in Israel. So I actually know to appreciate it.
Is there a difference that happens in one's character in society because of the changing of the seasons as we find here versus in Israel where most days are very warm or hot?
I'm sure there are many. By the way, it's one of the topics that I wanted to speak about our book. What happened to people who change places from Oklahoma to California, for example. But, I want to share with you a very interesting fact. When the mandate was in Israel until 48, there was no murder of the first degree. Did you know that? And you know
No,
why?
no,
Because they came to the conclusion that everyone is a little bit crazy because it's too hot.
really.
And I'm not kidding. This was the law. Like every murder was treated as a second degree murder because there was like a reason to kill others because people just got mad from the heat.
I think
Interesting,
if you
isn't
take
it?
a look at traffic violations, accidents, deaths in Israel, or what was before the law ensuring that everybody had air conditioning, that you saw the type of character that was reflective of a very hot environment. When people drove, they were mishigoyim, they were crazy.
I don't have scientific,
I don't
facts
either.
or
No.
evidence, but it sounds true. Like some people like when your brain is like in a temperature of 38 degrees Celsius and higher. I guess that certain parts of your brain start to melt down, and maybe that's a reason to do all kind of mishigas. I don't know.
Do you
Interesting.
bundle up in our winters? Do you get with the scarf and boots and gloves and hats?
Not really, but I admire the fact that people can take something as harsh as the winter here and to enjoy it. When I came to
Yeah,
Toronto, I tried to learn how to skate
yeah.
on ice, something that at the time was not in Israel at all, or to ski. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Like you take the snow and the ice, all the things that actually make your life miserable, and you turn it to kind of fun.
Yes.
And I was very impressed by it, by
How
the
did you how
thought,
did
by
you
the philosophy about it. Instead of like just like complaining about the weather, you actually learn to enjoy it. But in
how
terms,
did you do on skates?
um, well, I think pretty well. I'm not a great skater, but I enjoyed it. I went with my children who are much better skaters. Some of them are excellent hockey player. And yeah, let's put it this way, after many bruises, I learned to stand on my 2 feet and to even, to circle the arena.
Like the Bnei Yisrael.
Yeah, this was like my Rabbi Akiva experience, learning skating in the age of 40
Oh, interesting analogy.
for the first time.
Yeah,
But I'm more impressed with Rabbi Akiva than with myself.
at least skating anyway. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the show is called the Avrum Rosensweig Show. A series that Rabbi Shlomo Gomorrah and I are doing is called Parshas and Prose. This is sponsored by the Professional Center. You will see the logo above the rabbi's head. Toronto's premier co-working space at 120 Adelaide, where more is the standard. The industry leader since 1987, TPC offers private and team offices, fully equipped meeting rooms, collaborative workspaces, premier amenities, and exceptional hospitality. Book a day a week, however long you need, to escape from home distraction and discover more privacy, more productivity, more community at TPC. More information, visit theprofessionalcenter.com. And if you mention Avrum, AVRUM, you'll get 10% off private offices and meeting rooms. Rabbi, I think a lot of our listeners and viewers, they want to know who you are more so. So just before we launch into the shir today, our class, you just came back from Washington. Can you tell us a bit about your trip?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem, God blessed me with 8 children. They are all over. I have 4 in Israel. I have 2 in the United States, 1 in Washington, 1 in LA. I have 2 here. And we try to visit them and from time to time. And indeed, I just arrived yesterday from Washington visiting my son Yair. You should have one day maybe a podcast with him. He's, by the way, an excellent chess player.
Yeah, is he?
Yeah, he's. I think he's a world level kind of a master.
Wow.
And a Talmid Chacham and a nice guy overall. So it might be interesting to interview him. So I went to interview him and to visit him, my 2 beautiful grandchildren there, my daughter-in-law, their parents. Was wonderful. And Washington was beautiful, I have to say. We on Friday we went through the mall and it was really beautiful.
What's your job now as a father for Yair? What is your task?
You know what? That's a very good question because I ask myself every day, and I think we are never prepared for the shift in our life. Because from a parent who tell your kids what to do, they became more like your brothers. And actually, the Torah realized it, that when Yaakov comes back from his father-in-law to Israel, the Torah calls his children Echav, his brother. And I think this is a very good description because you start asking them questions, enjoy their wisdom and their experience. They see things differently. So obviously, I'm not in a position of what to tell my children to do anymore. But first of all, I think I reap some of the fruits that, over the years, I try to teach them good things. And I think that they learn most of it. And second of all, they are independent people. They can enrich your life, not only as a father, but really as someone who had their own personality and their own views.
A number of years ago, I wrote an article for the Canadian Jewish News about empty nesters, individuals whose children have gone off and made a life for themselves. And I found that 50% of them were really happy at the quiet and the peacefulness in the house. And I discovered, too, that 50% of them were really sad that it was so quiet in the house. Which side are you?
I'm both of them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm sad. It's the house is empty. But spending, let's say, more than 5-6 hours with the grandchildren, I'm very happy to go back home and to be empty nester.
Yeah, they say if I knew being a grandparent was so great, I would have done it first.
I'll tell you one thing which I find very, very interesting. When I was a child, the same age of my grandchildren now, I had grandparents from my father's side. Unfortunately, my parents from my mother side were exterminated in Auschwitz. But my grandparents from my father's side managed to come to Israel, and I went to visit them quite often. And it was very different from the situation today. When my grandfather reached the age of 65, he retired. They had time. I think they were very happy when we came to visit because they had very little other things to do, or at least that's what I think. Today it's very different. Grandparents in this age sometimes are very active, they are working, they have many other interests in life, and they are not as available to their grandchildren as my grandparents were
Mm.
to me. And it's a change of in society. It comes with many implications. The connection between grandparents and their grandchildren, the role of grandparents in the life of grandchildren. Um, I can see certainly like a big difference between my generation as a child and this generation as a grandfather. No questions about it.
Very good. Yeah, I can see the difference. And 65 today is very, very young. So you're right. People are having light, really vibrant lives. Whereas when we were growing up, my grandfather at 65, what I can remember was like an old man. Much different. Much different.
Well, maybe our grandchildren see it
I'm
in us
sure they do.
today,
I'm
and
sure
we
they do.
just try to deny it. I don't know.
I'm sure
But
that's
the
the truth.
reality is, listen, I could retire, and I'm very, very happy to work, and I actually dread the moment I will not working, and I do it really with excitement and vigor, as 40 years ago.
Rabbi Gamora, you're the type of person that even when you do retire from your formal job, your day job, I mean, you're going to be so busy because you love learning Torah, as an example. And we're going to get you to write a book.
I mean,
I mean, Chazaku Baruch.
you know,
Ladies,
if you manage to convince me to be on this podcast, you might
yeah.
even convince me to write a book one day.
Oh, yeah, I have goals for you. I do.
So thank you for that.
People are going to discover your greatness more so than they already have. That I assure you. Ladies and gentlemen, the series is called Parshas and Prose. It's a fascinating idea that the rabbi came up with. And essentially what we do is we look at the Parsha of the week, the portion of the Torah, which is this week Ekev. And what we do is we look at it through the lens of classic literature. This week we are studying Ekev through the lens of the Grapes of Wrath, a classic book by the great American Nobel Prize winner John Steinbeck. A little bit about Ekev, a little bit about the Grapes of Wrath, then we're going to dive into some questions. The Torah portion Ekev, which spans Deuteronomy 7:12 to 11:25, continues Moses' address to the Israelites as they prepare to enter the Promised Land. Ekev reflects the key theme of the portion, the blessings that will follow if the Israelites heed God's commandments. Moses begins by emphasizing the importance of obeying God's law and keeping the commandments, stressing that their adherence will lead to prosperity and blessings in the land they are about to inherit. He reminds them of the covenant God made with their ancestors and how their faithfulness will secure God's favor. There's lots more, and we will get to that. As for the Grapes of Wrath, most of us have read it. It was one of the books that was given to us on, I don't remember what age, maybe grade 6, grade 7, to read. It was classic literature and a fascinating story. John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, published in 1939, is a powerful and evocative novel set during the Great Depression. It follows the Joad family, Joad, tenant farmers displaced from their land in Oklahoma due to severe drought and economic hardship. The story begins with Tom Joad coming home from prison, returning to his family to find that they had been evicted from their farm. The Joads, along with their extended family, decide to travel to California in search of better opportunities, enticed by advertisements promising plentiful work and prosperity. And as they go on this trek, many things happen and many hardships happen, but there's also incredible community that comes out of their meeting with other people who are in the same situation along the road. These are two pieces, the Torah with this piece of literature, which are very, very similar in many ways, and we are going to find out how. Rabbi, before we ask our first question, how do you choose the novel that we will use vis-a-vis the Parsha of the week?
It's very intuitive, I must say. I go a week before we meet, and I go over the themes of the next parsha, and usually one of the themes catch my eye, and I say, well, I think that this book will be a very good idea to discuss because it also deals with a similar theme. Now, I want to say one thing about the grapes of wrath because I think it's very, very important. Usually we take something from the book and we discuss it and we relate it to the parsha. This book of Steinbeck, I think, is so important, and I'll tell you why. And why I believe that sometimes literature might highlight the parsha in a very different eyes. Listen, Baruch Hashem, today in the 21st century, I don't think that any Jew in the world live in extreme poverty. I don't think that many Jews, by the way, own land and understand what does it mean to leave the land and to be exiled. And even the people in exile, like us here in Canada, we don't feel what exile really means. As I always say, sometimes I feel that like life in yeshiva or in the Torah world is like lichyot beseret, is like to live in a movie. You don't live the real life. And many of the mitzvot of the Torah are talking about real life. What happened in poverty? What's your responsibility? And what is your reaction to poverty? Something that we don't know. When you read this book, the Grape of Wrath, in Zam in Hebrew, I read it the first time in Hebrew. It's a beautiful translation, in Zam, which is a biblical expression, by the way, from Parshat Azinu. It gives you some idea what actually a family is going through. What does it mean to lose your land? What does it mean to lose your dignity, your culture? And only when you read a book like this, you start to understand. Like many of the mitzvot of the Torah, for example, taking interest. So many farmers became in extreme poverty because the issue of rebate, of taking interest, because you need 1 year of drought or 2 years, and you have to start asking for money to buy seeds, and it's not working, and you need more money, and you have to obviously pay the interest. So people cannot understand, even people in yeshiva, they cannot really feel what the Torah wanted you to feel.
Yeah.
And therefore, a book like this bring you to the world of a farmer that lost everything, which is not only the land, it's his dignity, the bond of his family, hope, losing hope. That's the worst thing on earth, and how it's just taking apart the family and society. And therefore, this book, more than other books, I believe, is an excellent background when we learn the Parshiot about the connection between people and the land of Israel, and what the Torah warns us from. Like exile from the land is going to have dramatic implication on the individual and the nation.
Rabbi, someone asked me in my share last week if there was anything written on the Bnei Yisrael's response to Moshe Rabbeinu not going into Israel. And we looked around. I challenged him. He challenged me a little bit. There's not much to find, but I asked him to develop some theories around it. In that light, you're talking about the leaving of the land, sometimes being kicked out of the land. Is there anything written in the Midrashim or otherwise about the Canaanite response to the Jewish people warring against them. Do we ever hear about what it is about our enemies and their aftermath, or is it just that they're there for the Jewish people to forge ahead?
That's an excellent question, and I love this kind of question. I love it when my students think beyond what the text is telling them,
Yes.
because it's not just about the text. As I always say, we learn the text, and to learn the text, you have to ask these kind of questions, because obviously the Torah describe it from the lens of the promised land and how Hashem fulfill His promise, but we don't know much about the reaction of the people who were in the land before, and about the justice or injustice that was involved in conquering another land. And here, like usual, yes, the Midrashim, the Torah Shebe'al Peh, the oral Torah, is telling us something to teach us, but you are absolutely right. This part of history was written by the conqueror and not by the people who were conquered. And we know very little about them. And we know about many other nations in this time. If you were not an empire, people did not bother to write their own history. And therefore, we know very little about it.
I
So it's
heard
a
I heard once, and tell me if this resonates with you, that the Canaanites were offered to stay if they would like.
well, according to the Rambam, and the Rambam obviously based himself on the Talmud and the Midrash, what happened was that although the Jewish people were commanded to fight the people on the land, this was the last resort. The Talmud is telling us that Joshua sent delegations to the different nations, and he sent them letters actually, and he offered them the following. Number one, we are going to be in peace, but obviously you are going to know who is the boss. We are the new boss in the land of Israel. The other one, peacefully, what we call today transfer of population. You can leave if you want. We are not going to harm you. Just, the Middle East is big. Try to find another place. And the third one, if you are not going to take our offer seriously, then the only way to deal with the situation will be by war. Now, this is a midrash. This is not said in the Torah itself, although we know from the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu negotiated with different nations, so there was kind of diplomatic relationship, I guess. He made some diplomatic efforts to allow the Jewish people to go through certain nation, which was not very, very successful. So I guess that there was also diplomatic relationship with the nations around. But what we find in the book of Joshua and Shoftim, Judges, is that actually there were pockets of nations still sitting in Eretz Israel. How is that possible? Wasn't it a command to destroy everyone? The answer is no. The command was to destroy people who will resist the idea that the Jewish people will get their land. But the people who choose to live in peace, they stay there. We can see it. It's written actually in the Bible. So you have to bridge the gap between the commandment to kill and the fact that many people stayed in the land of Israel in these pockets here and there. Almost every tribe had some places in his state that were populated by the Canaanites and others. And to bridge this gap, our sages are telling us that they could stay if they understood the consequences. They accepted the Jewish people as the master of the land.
Is there any discussion amongst Chazal, amongst the rabbis, about the ethics behind colonization?
Very little, I would say. It was very clear. This was the promise of God.
Yeah.
The first Rashi on the Torah say that, it's a decision of God. The Torah does not believe much in colonialism. Colonialism, according to the Torah, as I understand it, maybe there will be a rabbi that will disagree with my interpretation. But I think, especially from the first Rashi on the Torah, which is based actually on Jeremiah. Colonization is just an execution of divine plan. No one owned the land. The land belonged to the Ribono Shel Olam, to God Himself. And God decide who is going to be the Lord of the land for a certain time. And, the Jewish people, they might think that they are the owner of the land, but God told them if they are not going to stand certain moral level, they are not going to be the master of the land. They are going to be exiled. So this is not something unique to the Canaanites or to the Moabites or any other nation. As long as you do what God expects you to do, you are going to own the land. But the moment you don't, you don't.
Right. La Hashem Haaretz Umloa, that everything belongs to God. It's interesting, Rabbi, when I was in yeshiva, and you would be in the Beit HaMedrash, the area where people studied, and you would find a Gemara on the table, open it up. You want to make sure you could use it. And it would say two things. It would say, La Hashem Haaretz Umloa, everything belongs to God. And then it would say, Makbid Gomer. In other words, don't touch this Gemara. It's not yours. And I always found that confusing what to do. I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah.
Rabbi, The Grapes of Wrath was written by John Steinbeck, and he won the greatest prize that one could possibly, win in the area of literature, Nobel Prize, right?
Yeah.
When you take
by
a
the way,
look,
we try to deal only with this,
noticed.
caliber of literature, although we might next week to deal with something a little bit lower, but great stuff.
Did Tolstoy win the Nobel Prize?
I don't think so. I think it was actually the first time was maybe after he passed away, but I'm not sure.
So we know the great writings of this man and the brilliance that happened in his mind in order to write down these very prolific, these very beautiful sentences. Now, in that light, when I was reading the Parsha this week, first I read it through, then I learn it. I thought, there is an edifice, an institution in the world, I don't know if you know this, which is called the Oratory or the Oratory Hall of Fame. Are you familiar with it?
No.
The greatest speeches in the world, Rabbi, Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech, are in this Hall of Fame. He's in there for that speech. When I'm reading...
He deserves to be there. He deserves 100%. To be there. And but I'm not sure that they have the greatest speech of all. And this is the speech of Moshe Rabbeinu in the book of Devarim. This is actually a lasting... before his departure from this world, he leave us with one of the greatest speeches in history.
So what I'm going to do this Thursday night, God willing, for my shir, I've done this once before. It's a bit of a departure. I'm going to ask the participants, the Talmidim, we're going to read the whole thing aloud, the whole Parsha aloud. Because when I read it, I thought, this is brilliant, brilliant literature. It's brilliant oratorical recipe. I just want to read a few lines. I want to ask you a question on this. This shall be the reward when you hearken to these ordinances and you observe and perform them. Hashem, your God, will safeguard for you the covenant and the kindness that he swore to our forefathers. He will love you. He will bless you. He will multiply you. And he will bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your land, your grain, your wine, and your oil, the offsprings of your cattle, and the flocks of sheep and the goats on the land that he swore to your forefathers to give you. Rabbi, we don't do this very much. We don't really discuss Torah in the context of literature, but let's for a second. Tell me something about the literature of the Torah. How brilliant in your mind is it? How great is it?
This is something that we will talk when we come to the Parsha of Haazinu, because the Torah itself, when Moshe Rabbeinu is commanded to write the Torah says, "Ve'ata kitvu lachem et hashira hazot." Now it's time to write this poem or this poetry. And many of the commentators say, what is the Shira? The Shira is about the Torah. The Torah is actually a poetry. It's a great piece, not only of direction and instruction how to live our life, but the way it's written is the poetry. Because every time that you relearn it, you find something amazing, new, which is what great literature and great poetry is all about. Now, it's interesting that the verse you choose, I say it, and actually the first thing every single week. There is a beautiful, beautiful tefillah that not too many people are saying, which is called V'yiten Lecha. It's a bunch of psukim, of verses, talking about um, the blessings and the love of God to the Jewish people and turning sad events to great events. And it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to read it. And the very first verse is the first that you actually quoted. Like you want to open the week with such a beautiful blessing that Hashem is going to bless you. If you just follow what you have to do, God is just waiting, to shower you with his blessings. So I love this pasuk. It's the pasuk that actually I start the week with and hope to see, the fulfillment of it. With my family, with my friends, my community, the Jewish people in large. So this is indeed one of the most magnificent, beautiful psukim that we have in the Torah.
Have you studied the Quran and the New Testament, the Bible?
I didn't, and maybe I will do it one day. And I want to tell you about an amazing experience I had 2 years ago in a Shabbaton of chat. Chat here in the school, we take students to Shabbaton to retreat for Shabbat in Jackson Point. It's a very beautiful Shabbat, but I'll tell you about one experience that was really outstanding for me. We try to bring with us a medical person, like a medic or a nurse, to be with us on Shabbat, and we hire a company that sends different people to be with the entire group on Shabbat in case that Chas v'Shalom something happened. You have like a medic on site. This medic looked very shy. He sat next to me on the Shabbat table and was very curious about things. And I asked him about all kinds of things, and he told me that he came from Libya 2 years before. Told me about his late father. He passed away. He was an oil engineer in Libya. They moved to Canada. He passed away a year before. And I saw that the guy is very, very intelligent, and he asked many questions about Shabbat and so on. So we developed like a good discussion, and to my amazement, I learned that the guy is unbelievable Muslim scholar. Muslim scholar, someone that I never had the opportunity to talk to. The guy is 21 years old. I wish that every Jewish 21 years person will have the knowledge that he had. And not only about Quran, about philosophy, about the greatest thinkers of Islam. And I have to tell you, Avrum, the Islam produced some of the greatest thinker about God and people and the world around us. Unfortunately, there is a great group of people that give a very bad name to Islam, but Islam by itself, the religion, is a religion of thinkers and great thinkers. Some of them developed, by the way, many sciences in the 9th and the 10th century afterwards. And I was amazed, like Hashem, he could orchestrated it. 2 weeks before that, I read about like some of the greatest Muslim thinkers and their disagreement with Rav Saadia Gaon, who lived at the same time and was very influenced, by the way, by these Muslim scholars, and he had excellent relationship with them. He agreed and disagreed upon certain principles. So I was able to talk to him, because if I would not read this article, I would be like the a person with no knowledge who speaks to a scholar. It's not a very a pleasant experience. And I did decide that I would like to explore a little bit more about the Muslim philosophy and the great scholar of Islam. But listen, plans are plans, and maybe I'll find time for this in the future. But I just realized that there is a lot to learn and to be enriched by someone else thinking.
I have a question when you get to that point of starting to study the Quran. And my question is, we'll just shelve it for a second, is, how we decipher the words of the Torah? We break them down, we rebuild them, we compare one word here and one word there. There's a whole process and principles applied to our learning of Torah. I wonder what happens if you apply those same principles as an example to the Quran. What happens?
I'm not sure it's the same. I think that some people explain what happened to Islam, that was a religion of thinkers, especially as I said in the 9th and 10th century, to what we have today, and the reputation, unfortunately, that they gain today. Is a lack of this culture of analyzing and asking
Yeah.
questions and offering different interpretation to the same verses. But again, it will be completely unfair of me, someone who doesn't know much about it, to speak about it. So what I know is from the surface, from the envelope of it. I really don't know much from within, so I'm not qualified to talk about it.
Rabbi, just, my father used to say, I'd like to say something before I speak. You and I say a lot before we actually talk. But just in light of what you were saying about sitting next to this gentleman at that Shabbat, I wrote an article a number of years ago, also for the Canadian Jewish News, about never knowing who knocks at your door to change your curtains. You never know who's coming in to fix your toilet. I had a Vietnamese fellow, who came, Tikna something, and he came to put in my shades. And I'm like you, I'm extraordinarily curious about people, about their experiences. And we had a long talk. He was a young man. He had just come over from Vietnam a few short years before. And but he was old enough to have gone through the bombing of Hanoi. And he told me about it. And he told me about when he walked out of his house after one of the bombings and he saw bodies piled up in front of his house. And then we talked extensively about how that affected his life. And the essence of my article, Rabbi, was similar to what you're saying about this Libyan fellow, is, you know what? You never know who's walking through your front door to do something menial or otherwise helpful within your house. Get to know them a little bit, because you can often find the world through a simple interaction with individuals like that, right?
If I can just complete this story, which was one of my most amazing experiences, like 20 years ago. The store on Shepherd and Bathurst, it's called today Metro. I think then it was a Miracle or something like
It's a
this.
supermarket. You buy food there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big supermarket. So it used to be that they sold 24 hours a day. Like it was never
Right.
like stopped, only maybe for Christmas or something like this. Um, and one night I remember, like I went at 1:30 with the milk or something that we really needed. I went to this store. Cannot remember what was their name before Metro, but anyway, um, like I see the cashier. This is from 2020, 2 years ago. The cashier is because there were no many people in the store. He's reading a book, and I look at the book, and this is like a book of one of the greatest philosophers in the world. Like I think it was Foucault or someone like this. And I couldn't help myself but to ask him, you read this book? That's quite amazing, because you what do you expect the cashier on a supermarket to read? And this was like a book that real scholars are learning. And we started to speak about the book, and the guy was a real scholar.
Yeah.
I could not understand it. And, at the end, because we formed some relationship, because otherwise I wouldn't dare to ask him a question like that. I said, what are you doing here? Like, you should be in university or something like this. And he told me about some of his challenges, like mental challenges,
Yeah.
that he cannot take a job, and even struggle with a job like this. This was one of my strongest experience, because since then, when I walk on the street, I don't judge anybody.
Mm.
Like, I don't know what kind of a person is walking next to me, and he might looks very down and very unpleasant, but you don't know if he's not like a philosopher in disguise.
Yeah, and Pirkei Avot says, Ezu chacham lamed mikol adam, right? Who's a wise person? Someone who learns from everybody.
Yeah.
Rabbi, how do the themes of faith and perseverance in the Torah portion of Ekev compare to the experiences of the Joad family in the Grapes of Wrath?
Well, first of all, think about like the word Joad. Doesn't it bring you like memories of Judah or something? I don't know. When I read this name, I thought about it. Like, wow, that's an interesting name for a book talking about exile and about people who have to leave their land, and about the connection of people to their land. I find this like a fascinating insight into the connection between people and their land. Now, more than that, you talk about perseverance in difficult situations. This is what the book is all about. And obviously, what I want to compare is to compare this family, one family, to a whole nation who managed to be twice, but the second time more than 2,000 years outside their land, and to preserve their tradition and culture in unbelievable way wherever they went to, their will to go back to their land and to do everything possible in order to make the change from the places that they already knew, they sometimes were even accepted, and they want to go back to their land. And the unending connection between society, people, and their land. So to me, this story is a lot about the galus, about exile and what happened to people in exile. And I think that this family, in many, many ways, reminds me the reaction of the Jewish people to their situation. On one hand, trying to form a community that will keep them together in face of all the adversaries that they went through, on one hand. At the same time, this strong will to go back to where they belong to.
What is the role of divine providence in Ekev, and how does it compare to the character's understanding of fate and luck in the Grapes of Wrath?
That's a great question. But you know what? I want just to bring one quote of Casey, who was like a former preacher. And he, along the book, he's like the rabbi of the family until, unfortunately, he was killed. And I just want to share one
Mhm.
quote, and I actually interested to hear what you had to do about to say about it. So he says the following: there ain't no sin and there ain't no virtue. There's just stuff people do. It's all part of the same thing. Now, this coming from a preacher is very, very interesting, because this is defeating, right? The idea of providence, of like hashgacha, as we know it in our literature, it put all the emphasis and the weight of what happened in life to people, to people. I think that Parsha Ekev see it in a very different way. Obviously, we are responsible to what we are doing, but eventually it's going to be God who is going to give us the land, exile us from the land, and return us to the land when the time is ready for this. And the time will be ready according to what we are doing. So on one hand, I can see completely what Casey said, and I am on his side. At the same time, I think that the Torah emphasized that at the end of the day, depend of what we are doing, God is going to come and to settle the Jewish people according to what they are doing.
What also occurred to me is that I think, tell me if I'm right about this or not. Do leaders generally, when they go through these long treks and these long, very arduous journeys, very hot, very demanding, very dangerous, a priest, a minister, would he likely get jaded versus Moshe Rabbeinu? Do you find that Moshe Rabbeinu got jaded at all as he was standing in front of the Jewish people? Was there a sense of youthfulness? Was there a sense of, yes, this man, despite what he has gone through with the Bnei Yisrael, he's still powerful, he's still vibrant, and he's not jaded? Juxtapose those two.
Why do you think that Moshe Rabbeinu was jaded?
No, I'm
I
asking
don't.
you. I'm asking if you think he was or not.
I don't think so. I think that the last speech is so powerful.
Yeah,
And the fact that he was able, first of all, to give such a long speech, but more important, that the people took this speech. Can you imagine that, like,
that's a good
you
point.
would be in a speech of a rabbi for 2 hours on Shabbos? These people are standing like days and days and days, and Moshe Rabbeinu is talking to them, and they listen.
Yes,
I
yes.
think it says something very important about the admiration, the acceptance of the Jewish people of their leader, because otherwise they would say, just leave us alone. We just want to cross the Jordan and to arrive to our land, and that's it. Here are standing people for weeks and listen, as I said before, to one of the greatest speech which is very demanding. This speech is rebuking and demanding and warning, and they listen carefully. And I think it says something about the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu. Absolutely, yes.
His strength as a leader, right? But just in general, when you take a look at, for instance, the writings of rabbis during the Holocaust, writings that came out afterwards, or reading the history, the biographies of great rabbis who have gone through real challenges in life, is your sense of the great ones that they're able to go through it somehow and not slow down, and despite the trials and tribulations, not get jaded, or at least not tremendously jaded? Is that the history of the character of our rabbis in history?
Most of them, I believe so. I think that the ultimate test to any leader and to any rabbi are not when things in the community are going, on even keel. Um, Rabbis as leaders, but especially rabbis that have to deal with the concept of emuna, where sometimes like the entire reality defeats your trust in God, um, have to face the situation and to come stronger. And I think you brought some examples from the Holocaust. I think it's the Holocaust. I think the time of the Inquisition is the time of the Aseret Harugei Malchut, the 10 martyrs that we mentioned on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. These kind of people standing this situation and stand strong, they actually enabled the Jewish people to continue in their journey. If not them, there were many opportunities in history that the Jewish people will lose their faith and just dissolve.
Rabbi, how do the concepts of prosperity and hardship in Ekev compare with the economic struggles portrayed in the Grapes of Wrath?
Unfortunately, Grapes of Wrath are describing a situation which is really like the bottom of the life of any farmer in the world. Like the poverty is unbelievable. And then not only the poverty, but the people around exploit these poor people who just had to leave their land, and they came with some hope to renewal, and they get hammered by bad people who just think about how to make sure that they get more money and more money, and treat them so in such cruelty. That's the story of Grape of Wrath, and the name itself is so pessimistic, actually. And only the last chapter is giving you some escape, or to hope, or to something greater than the depression of the moment. In the Torah, it's very, very clear. It's your choice. It's your decision. When you come to the fork, you have to take the right direction in life, and God will do all the rest. And if you suffer, it's just a result of your own deed. You have no one to blame, just yourself. And in this regard, I think the two are very, very different. If you read the Grape of Wrath, you are left with bitterness in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's not an easy read. In the Torah, you can see the bitterness of what will happen if you are wrong, but it's so beautiful that the Torah tells you what will happen if you are right, what kind of blessing God is going to shower upon you. So it's very, very different in the direction. And indeed, the purpose of Steinbeck was actually more talking about social justice, how society and spreading the wealth of society is impacting every person, something that might have lots of significance to the Democratic Convention today. This is going to be one of the hot topics between the Republicans and the Democrats, how exactly to share wealth. But it's an old issue. The Torah itself is dealing with it. The Torah predicted, "Ki lo yechdal evyon mikerev haaretz," there will be no time and no place that there will be no poverty. Poverty is there. The question is how society and individuals are dealing with it.
Is that why God seems to have a very special place in his heart for the widow and the orphan, which is mentioned in this parsha and many other parshiot?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. And as I said, we, Baruch Hashem, live in good times, and Baruch Hashem, most of us don't know what does it mean to be with no source of income, someone that bring food to the table. But there were generations, and not too long ago. I'm sure that our listeners, if they ask their grandparents, they will hear stories that they heard from grandparents, even from people who came to Toronto and could not put food on the table. Because people are not going to run outside and tell you how poor they are, so we don't know much about it. But the Torah knew, God knew that in every society there are people who are really miserable, the widow, the orphan. Sometimes they are going to go to sleep with no food on their table.
But was there ever a time where you financially had struggles, where you weren't sure what you would eat?
No. Unfortunately, not, Baruch Hashem. As I said, we live in a very different kind of society of welfare. But I heard stories from my father, certainly, when they were, displaced from Poland to Russia, something that saved their life, by the way. But they were in Siberia for a long time, and they simply did not have what to eat.
Rabbi, what is the Torah portion of Ekev, which, by the way, has 111 psukim,
Oh,
111 lines?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, 111. What does Ekev say about remembering the past, and how does it relate to the characters' reflection on their past and the future in the Grapes of Wrath?
Well, that's a very important question, because I think that what the Torah is telling us is that even if we find ourselves in a situation that we are expelled from our land and don't have our land, we still have to keep the culture, the Torah, the commandments, the hope to return. And this is a key to understand Jewish history. Because, there is one miracle that people don't pay attention to. It's not like splitting of the Red Sea, but the existence of the Jewish people itself. Because nowhere in history, you would find a society that immigrated to a different place, especially to empires like Assyria or Egypt or America, and stayed with their values and their culture. You don't find it. The tendency of any society or family or tribe that immigrated to a new place is to become, as soon as possible, part of the society. And by the way, the Jewish people are not very different. We try to be like, respected citizens of the society that accepted us. But at the same time, we always kept this culture. Now, in a Grape of Wrath, you have this beautiful description when the people are on their way to California, the land of milk and honey of America. What helped them to face their difficulties of like moving on Route 66. By the way, I did it once. It's a very interesting road. Um, anyway, on their way to California, and the doubts and the rumor that they hear that things are not going to be so great in California, what kept them together was a sense of community, sitting together, singing, forming a community, religion. These are things that help to make a community together. And when I read this chapter, it reminded me the famous psalm in Tehillim that we say, Al Ne'arot Babel, on the rivers of Babylon, we sat and we were asked to sing, but we couldn't. We put our harps on the willows and we couldn't sing. And it's amazing that actually this fact that we couldn't sing kept us alive, because we remember that we are not belong to Babylon. Yes, there were beautiful rivers, and actually the Jewish community prospered on the banks of the Euphrates and the Tiger. The Babylonian Talmud was written there, not in Eretz
Right.
Israel. We have to
Right.
remember it. But it came from the fact that we always remembered where we belong to and we want to return there. In Grape of Wrath, yes, it kept them with some hope, with a sense of community, but at a certain point, you come to a conclusion that if California was nice to them, they would never try to return back to Oklahoma. And indeed, in the book, they never returned there. So here is another difference, like the difference focused on the difficulties, but less on the hope that we will go back to Oklahoma. In Parshat Ekev, and actually in the entire book of Devarim, the Torah said you are going to face terrible things in exile, but you always keep the hope to return back to your land. And you know what? In this generation, that's exactly what happened. After 2,000 years, the Jewish people keeping the love to Zion, the memories of Zion, the communal memory of going back to Eretz Israel was fulfilled. Today, the greatest number of Jews in the world are living in Medinat Israel.
Rabbi, what is it about us that allows us to keep our, as you called it, culture, our way, our religion? What is it about us?
Education, number one. Education. This Veshinantam Levanecha, the fact I always tell my students, the first day that the walls around the Warsaw Ghetto were erected, the first day, people were like shocked by the new reality. The second day, there were 16 schools in the Warsaw Ghetto. Can you
Really?
imagine something like
Really?
this? And to me, that's most of all kept the Jewish community together. The love for learning, the need for learning, the Shabbat, obviously, this shelter of time that the Jewish family coming together and talk together and seeing each other. Obviously, the commandment and the tefillot in shul. All these, even if you are not like believer, you are still part of the Jewish community, which is quite amazing. I knew a person, I would not say the shul, he passed away a few years ago, and he told me, listen, Rabbi Gemara, I will be completely honest with you, and I was happy about it. He said, after the Holocaust, I don't believe in God. He told me. So I said, why do you come to shul? He said, what the connection? I come to shul because all my friends are going to shul. And they want to be part of the Jewish community, which is the greatest community in the world. I feel part of it. My emunah was affected by what I saw in Auschwitz and other places, but the Jewish community, that's a very different story. It shocked me on one hand, but it matured me a lot because I started to see things that, again, in the yeshiva, as I always say, you live in a movie. You don't know what people are going through. You see your life as like the meter of and the measurement of everything else. It's not. People are going through unbelievable things in their life, and you have to be sympathetic and attentive to what people are going through in their life.
I just want to take your thought a little bit further. You'll find it in this Parsha. It's one of the paragraphs in the Shema, one of the greatest pieces of liturgy of within Judaism, if not the greatest. You have to learn, you have to study, you have to teach your children. On Pesach, we say it over and over and over, this generation, that generation. And yet you find in public education and the law, which stated that children have to go to school in the United States and America, didn't happen until the end of the 1800s. The little kids were working in factories. Whereas you said, beautiful example of what happened in the Warsaw Ghetto. You find this throughout history. You find in the Talmud that when the temple was destroyed and Jerusalem was destroyed, that what did the rabbis ask for? To build a yeshiva. But why? Why is that? Why the commitment, not only from the rabbis, but from the Amcha, from the Bnei Yisrael? I understand what you're saying. Education held us together. But why did we adhere to it?
Because we, as a Jewish community, always felt that we are on a mission, ongoing mission. We have something to give over to the world. We have to give something over to the world. Yeah. We hold Torah Emet, the truth of Torah, the values of God Himself who gave them to us, and we cannot compromise. We cannot compromise it as much as it hard and difficult and requires lots of sacrifice, physically, mentally, people, time, and so on. I think that inside every Jew, there is a small or a big flame that tells him, you have a job in this world. You have to make sure that you and your family after are going to be part of this mission and to carry on the torch from one generation to another. So what is exactly, I'm not sure, but I think that in the Jewish DNA, there is a yearning and understanding that we have a mission. And when people have a mission, they committed to it and they make sure to teach it to others. That's the source of teaching.
When you're here in Toronto, walking around as you look, the very prominent beard, wearing a kippah, are you always conscious of that mission versus when you're walking in Jerusalem, when you go see your family? Do you have a mission there that you're conscious of?
I try to remember it, especially when I get angry about something. And I want to say something sharp sometimes, I remind myself, no, I can't do it. I represent more than myself, and as much as I want to react in a certain way, people will judge not only me but the larger Jewish community. I want to tell you like an embarrassing story that happened to me actually last Friday in Washington. Um, we went to the subway to the metro of Washington in order to get to the mall, and apparently a lady was behind me. And when I opened the door to the subway, I did not left it open to this lady, and she like said, "That's not how a gentleman behave." And I was so embarrassed,
Yeah.
Avrum, like because it's not about a gentleman. It's like I'm a rabbi. I'm a Jewish person, and here I was judged. I got immediate feedback, and I was embarrassed by it. And I learned something from it. I wanted to say thank you for her, but I don't think that she wanted to hear anything from me. But yes, I think we should be a little bit more aware, even for these little things.
But what about in Israel when you're walking around Ben Yehuda, Nagid? Do you feel a mission as well?
I think so. I think listen, everyone who is a rabbi, he decided in a certain age that he's going to be a representative of Torah, representative of values. Um, can we always live under this, like, yoke of a feeling that I am an agent of God? Well, I don't want to be a liar. I'm not. But I think that inside, through the years, through the process of growing all the time, I think it influences my words, my behaviors, and I take it to my heart when I fail to stand this kind of high standards.
When I was a boy in Kitchener, I would take off my kippah all the time because I didn't want that responsibility of representing the Jewish people, and I had a really, really hard time with it. Um, and for many, many years, I really did not enjoy whatsoever, and I did not wear my kippah because I really wanted to be private. I didn't want to represent anybody but myself. Now that has changed over the years, and it might be a function in part of being a rabbinical son and the only rabbinical child in a city where there were no other Orthodox Jews, Jews that one could see that the Jewish person was religious. So I my experience was similar to yours but different.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's interesting, and I think there is one point, and maybe I will end here. It deserves a discussion of how much we are part of the world
yeah.
and how much we keep to ourselves, our culture, and our inner side. Because I find it the greatest struggle, especially in societies like ours, that you want to excel and you want to be part of the larger society, and at the same time you are different. We cannot deny it. We are different. We have different culture, and this is the greatest struggle for people like you and myself.
Rabbi, I want to conclude with this question. I'm very curious as to your answer. In Ekev, there is a focus on gratitude and recognizing blessings. How does this theme compare to the Joad's perception of their situation and their sense of gratitude or lack thereof in the wrath?
So I think it depends on the people in the book of Steinbeck, because he brings few different people like Tom or Ma Joad or Pa Joad, and they each one of them had a different take on life. So it's very hard to say like categorically that all of them had gratitude or lack of gratitude. Um, I find that like the older the people are, they more have gratitude to what they had and to the value of family. If you take like the grandparents, um, or Tom, even who is obviously the most important figure in this book, I think they have a little bit more. I think once that people faces more difficulty, the younger generation, simply don't have the opportunity to see the blessings, and therefore they become more bitter and less appreciative of their life, which is quite understandable.
Next week's Parsha is Parshat Prose. Can you tell us which novel we'll be juxtaposing that with?
I'm not sure.
Aha,
I
gotcha.
think I want to talk a little bit about the secret of history, but I'm not sure. So let me have like another. I want to go again over the themes. I'm sure that we will find something. Varim is quite easy to find something, but I'll tell you what I thought about the secret of history, why I choose it, and this you tell me what do you think about the theme. Next week we are going to deal with a charismatic leader who managed to take the people from their emunah in God, from their belief in God, and they follow him, the leader, which I think is an amazing concept, and the warning of the Torah to the people not to be heavy influenced by the Navi, by the prophet, or by the person who present himself with mighty power of knowing the future and having influence on people. And that's why I'm looking for the secret of history that is dealing with this kind of charismatic leader that managed to influence very badly a group of students. And because we are talking here about students, about university, about what's going on today in universities, I tend to discuss this book. I'm not sure yet. I will let you know today, Bezrat Hashem.
Okay. But what I would
And
like...
you know what? I have an idea. If people are interested that we will discuss certain books, if I read them and we read them, it will be wonderful. If not, it will give me maybe some motivation to read new books. Please send us, myself or Avrum, your ideas, and I'll be more than happy to read some new good books.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, send us an email. You see the rabbi's email at the bottom there. Mine is avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com. And Rabbi, one of the things I think that we want to do through this shiur, through this series that we're doing, is to give our listeners and our followers a context of what the Torah is all about and Judaism. So if you don't mind, what I'd like us to do next week as well, in the first few minutes of our show, which we know we're going to stretch out, maybe we could talk a little bit about what is a midrash, because I struggled with that for years, and I still have questions on what is a midrash. Is it a story? Is it based in truth? Is it a little bit of both? And a lot of people wonder about what we're supposed to take out of midrashim within the context of Torah learning. So we good with that?
We have a deal.
Okay, good deal. Until then, my friends, I want to remind you that this show is sponsored now, and that's really exciting. And I'm going to tell you about our sponsors. It's sponsored by the Professional Center, Toronto's leading co-working space where excellence is the norm. From private silent offices to fully equipped meeting rooms, their spaces are designed to allow you to focus and get to work. At TPC, they combine high-end amenities with unparalleled services, ensuring your office experience meets the highest standards. Discovered why TPC offers more sophistication, more privacy, and more opportunities to grow. For more information, visit theprofessionalcenter.com. And if you mention my name, Avrum, A-V-R-U-M, or the rabbi calls me Avrum. I love when you call me that. 10%, you get 10% off private offices and meeting rooms. My parents used to call me Avrum. When I came to Toronto, I kind of waspicized it to Avrum. And then I had a tremendous challenge in my head as to what really is my name. And then I decided I have many names, but I love when you call me Avrum. I love that.
And you know what? That Avram himself, like God changed his name. So you are just follow his step, like, different phases of Avram, Abraham. I like it, Avrum. Sorry.
I love that. The Israelis call me that. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and preserve and protect the captives and missing soldiers of the citizens of Israel and the Israel Defense Forces. May God rescue them from captivity and speedily restore them in peace in the merit of the prayers of this holy congregation who pray for them. May the Holy One, blessed be God, show them mercy, increase their strength, remove their pain, and send them a recovery of body and spirit. May God return them to the bosom of their family swiftly and soon. And let us all say amen.
Amen.
There's news that just came out today about, I think, 5
Six.
hostage bodies that were found. Oh, just heartbreaking. Just heartbreaking.
It is.
Okay. Anyways, have a beautiful week and a beautiful Shabbat. Thank you so much for joining us. We're very grateful, and we look forward to being with you once again next week. As they say in the vernacular,